guess it was 2018, I first met you. We were sitting next to one another at a dinner, and just a random group of people who were part of a program I think was put on by Worth Economy then. And had a nice conversation. I said, by the way, what do you do, Andrew? And you said, oh, I'm running for president of the United States.
Yes.
And I chuckled. And indeed, you handed me a business card. And that's the first I met you and was impressed and blown away by you from the minute we met.
Oh, well, thanks, Jim. Though I'm sure you were surprised when I said I was running for president, as was my wife and a lot of a lot of other. One of the responses I got was president of, and I said United States, obviously. But it was a phenomenal run.
I remember I tried to convince my son to take a year off from work and volunteer for you and travel around with you. I thought it would have been a great learning experience for him. And indeed it would have been, because he explained to me on the way home that it would be difficult to explain to his wife, who was about to give birth, that, well, good luck with the baby. I'm going on the road for a year. But it would have been a great experience. So, I mean, and you had wonderful people around you.
Some of them are still grinding away, but the campaign attracted awesome people who wanted to improve things in America.
Take it back to the beginning. I'd love for people to really know who you are, especially our community, because so many people in our community are in a position to hear what you have to say, appreciate it, and maybe help. But at the very beginning, you grew up here in New York, upstate New York originally, right?
Yeah, I was born in Schenectady. My dad worked for GE and then IBM. We moved to Westchester County when I was
Mom and Dad,
5.
both academics, both immigrated from Taiwan here in the 60s?
Yeah, they met at UC Berkeley as immigrants, got married, and then had me and my brother. So I grew up the child of immigrants in upstate New York, one of, frankly, very few Asian kids up there, at least, but had a deep love of the country from early on, but also like a sense that we needed to work really hard.
Now, your dad, a physicist, PhD in physics, worked at IBM and
GE.
And GE, yeah.
And generated 69 U.S. patents over his career.
69 patents.
Yeah, most of which were for IBM. So when I was a teenager, I said to him, hey, Dad, like, how much money do you get when you get a patent? He was like, yeah, a few $100. And I was like, that doesn't sound like enough. And then he said, I also get a salary so I can feed and clothe you and your brother. And I was like, okay.
All right, I'll let you slide.
It's like, I think I see how this works. When I was a kid, I didn't realize how remarkable it was to have a dad who was inventing things.
And your mom is remarkable, too, because I read that she is not only an academic in the sciences, but she's an artist, too. So right brain, left brain, you come from a good gene pool.
Thanks. Again, I didn't realize how awesome my mom was in becoming a professional artist mid-career, but she has now shows worldwide and is part of one of the national galleries here in New York.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, in Gramercy.
I got to go to Art Basel in Miami Beach the end of last year for the first time. I was blown away by it. I'll try not to miss it again. It was really quite an experience.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who went, and they're like you. They can't get enough of it.
First of all, the people watching was the best I've ever seen. I mean, you see all kinds of people there, and the art was just overwhelmingly beautiful. I mean, just color and all the different kinds of ideas coming at you. It's just pretty incredible. We were guests of UBS, United Bank of Switzerland, who's been their big sponsor since it was created in Switzerland. And so you got to see it a special kind of way there, meet some of the artists. It was just an all-around great experience.
It sounds like you had the good Basel experience.
I did.
You were like, oh,
couldn't be better. So then you wind up going to school up in New Hampshire, great prep school, Exeter.
Yeah, went to Exeter and then Brown and then Columbia Law School here in the city. So pretty standard stuff. I'm actually heading up to Exeter next week to speak to the assembly. So that should be a nice trip back.
Pretty good schooling. Exeter, Brown, Columbia.
Yeah, my parents were happy with me for a while. It's like, yeah, not bad.
Where did they go wrong?
Yeah, where indeed. So I started practicing law just steps away from here, actually, at Davis Polk and Wardwell in New York.
Which is one of the big brand name law firms in New York. So that's like a big deal to get in there.
Yeah, and
I love the way you described the experience there.
Yeah, well, like which version was that? It was a pie. It's a pie eating contest where if you won, you got more pie to eat. So I'd met a couple of entrepreneurs in my early 20s, and I thought, whatever those guys are doing, I want to do it too. Like I need to
While
start
you
something
were working as a lawyer?
Yeah, or even before when I was in law school, I met a couple of people, and I graduated in '99, so the .com boom was on,
Yep.
and I'd go to some launch parties
Just
and
about to blow up.
just about to blow up. So I ended up leaving the firm to start .com that would fail and blow up. I talk about how it was a mini rise and maximum fall because it's not like we even got that.
I was in the healthcare space.
Much success. So that first one was called stargiving.com. It was celebrity affiliated philanthropy online. It was a precursor to what now is Omaze. I thought, wow, we could generate a ton of energy for various causes online.
Yep.
But it was a bit before its time.
But then you did have success with a company you started up with a partner.
Yeah, I worked for another startup and then became the partner of a guy who'd started an education company here in New York called Manhattan Prep. Our flagship offering was the test to get into business school, the GMAT. So we became number one in the U.S. in that category and were then acquired by a public company in 2009.
Kaplan, was it?
Yeah, Kaplan, which was part of the Washington Post at that time.
Mm-hmm. Well, under your leadership there, though, you really grew the number of locations you had. I think you grew to almost 70 locations.
Yeah, I think when I joined up with Zeke, we might have had 3 locations, and then I went all around the country and even a little bit international, and went wherever people wanted to go to business school. So it was a great 4 or 5 years. And after you become number one in your category, then people start calling.
Mm. And then,
I think you have some experience with that, Jim.
Trying to. Overnight success, the 47th year of overnight success. Tell me about after you sell that, you decide you're going to help other entrepreneurs become entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so this is when my wife started regretting.
Started?
Oh, but until then, I was a fairly conventional business guy.
Oh, look, you go to all these great schools, you got a law degree, you get to Davis Polk. Hey, I pretty much know what the road looks like. Not.
Yeah, completely. So I started a nonprofit called Venture for America that was trying to be the Teach for America for entrepreneurship, because I thought that our country didn't have enough entrepreneurs. I knew a lot of directionless young people who were heading into law and consulting and other things when they didn't have any passion or desire for those things. They just thought, well, this is what success looks like. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, if I could have more people follow in Jim McCann's footsteps and people who want to build real businesses in places like Detroit, Cleveland, Birmingham, New Orleans, St. Louis, that would be exactly what the country needs. And I bet a lot of young people would love to take on that challenge.
And that was a not-for-profit.
Yeah, it was a not-for-profit. So I donated $120,000 to seed it and then went around to rich friends who liked entrepreneurs, ended up raising, X million for it over the next 4 or 5 years, and recruited hundreds of young people to startups around the country. Yeah, we have some real success stories out of it too. I wanted to make it so that more of our talent was solving problems and building businesses that employed people as opposed to becoming transactions experts.
I was listening to someone, Scott Galloway recently, and it was on another podcast, not his own, one with Sam Parr and Sean, and they were talking about, he was saying that it seems now that before you had the choice of you could be an entrepreneur, you could be professional, that was your choices. You could be in professional services, you could be in business, or you could be an entrepreneur if you had a good education. And now he said there's another track, which is to go to work for big tech. He said it really didn't exist before, where you can make an extraordinary amount of money with no capital at risk and be in a challenging and stimulating work environment. I don't know how long that lasts. I think he's right, but I think it eats into the number of people who would be entrepreneurs. I know a couple of entrepreneurs who've sold their businesses to Google or Amazon, and they stay on for a while, but then all of a sudden they realize,
it's just like that TV show Silicon Valley, man. Like where your company gets bought, it just gets bolted on and they forget about you. And you're like, wait, what? Did you guys buy me so we could actually take this places? I'm like, no, not really. Just kind of wanted some of your engineers and make sure you're not a threat. So Scott and I bonded over this. I used to joke that now smart people in America do one of 6 things in 6 places. Yeah. It's law, finance, consulting, medicine, academia, and big tech in New York, Boston, San Francisco, DC or LA or Chicago. And if you look at the numbers,
And now Miami Beach.
literally, and now, yeah, it's true. I'm out of date. I could add a seventh place now. But if you look at the numbers, something like 75, 80% of graduates of certain universities, including the ones I went to, will do one of those six things. And a lot of them could have done other things that might have actually
Been
addressed.
beneficial to mankind.
Yeah, and even, and keep in mind, it's like, to me, if someone starts a mom and pop business locally, I mean, that can employ dozens of people, give them real solid opportunities. I mean, it doesn't need to be like I started a unicorn. I mean, and my education company, it was like wasn't a $1 billion business, but I became the head of an extended family where I'd hire people and see their careers grow. So, I mean, Jim, how many careers have you shaped and helped form? I mean, probably at this point, thousands.
Yes, and it's what was really nice recently is a bizarre story, and I said it was really nice. We had a fellow who worked for us a long time, passed away last week, and I went to the services on Friday, and my brother and I were in the back of the room there. It was a big, big room, and filled. First of all, it was filled with flowers, just beautiful, the whole room. And this was a wonderful guy. He retired from us a couple of years ago. He had had some health issues and succumbed to them. But to see his wife, who still works for us, they met working for us.
Lovely.
And all the people who would come through that room to pay the respects. He used to handle our franchise system. So they flew in from the West Coast, LA, Phoenix, Las Vegas, Florida, New Jersey. People came in from near and far. And to see them all bond and a lot of hugging going on, and to see people who had worked for us for 30 years who'd since retired, to see all the different people who'd come through our doors. It was real. I said to my brother, it's a weird sense. So you're here to pay tribute to someone who's passed, but yeah, real sense of pride.
It's like a family reunion.
It is, very much.
Yeah, completely. I had a miniature version of that journey, and I'm personally responsible for at least half a dozen marriages I can think of, and there are probably some others I don't know about. So
maybe a few that got destroyed. No.
I'll have to look into that. But these businesses are like extended families, and if you're a good CEO and leader, that's what you feel. And it's a very, very different development process for a human being if you're in one of those orgs and if you're leading one of those orgs. So I wanted to help more people experience that and hopefully help create families of their own.
There was some success stories that you can think of, and you'd like to shine a light on.
The one that people have heard the most about is a company called Banza, which is chickpea pasta. It's doing, maybe, tens of millions of dollars in revenue. It's in thousands of stores around the country, and people are like, Banza, I love that company. Yeah. But it was started by 2012 Detroit fellow named Brian Rudolph and his team. He was in Detroit and said, hey, I could use some healthy pasta. And then he made it himself and it became this hit product. There are dozens of other companies, but that's the one that people are most familiar with.
Yeah, that's great. Tell me about the process where you decided, hey, I've created Venture for America. I've started a few different businesses, some I've done very well with. I want to run for president. How does that evolution come about?
Well, I can prove that I had no desire or interest in running for president by the fact that Venture for America did not operate in Iowa or New Hampshire.
So it wasn't a preconceived plan.
It was not preconceived because, I definitely would have started an Iowa branch if I'd known what I was going to do next. But I had met a number of our senior political leaders, and I probably had a similar experience to a lot of the folks that are listening to this, which is it wasn't that great. That's like, you weren't like, wow, these people are amazing. It was more like, whoa, like you guys seem kind of stuck and very pedestrian oftentimes. I'd traveled the Midwest and the South, and I'd seen the aftermath of the automation, a lot of the manufacturing labor in the Midwest and the South. And I had this sinking feeling. It was like, whoa, I'm here starting little businesses and helping startups grow. And then meanwhile, the backdrop is freaking husks of giant plants and communities. Like you'd go and there'd be, blown out cities. And you'd think, wow, obviously very proud of what I was there doing, but you thought that there was tide going out, not going in a lot of these places. And then Donald Trump became our president in 2016. And I thought, well, this is why we'd eliminated 4 million manufacturing jobs that were primarily based in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, all states Donald Trump won. Mm-hmm. I knew my friends in Silicon Valley were working on things that were going to do the same thing to retail workers, call center workers, fast food workers, eventually truck drivers, and thought, okay, we are in the maybe third inning of the displacement of a lot of American workers, and that's brought us Donald Trump. And we do not seem to be talking about the fourth industrial revolution or AI or any of these things 4 or 5 years ago. So I said, look, well, at first I went out to Silicon Valley. I said, hey guys, we're automating away a lot of jobs, right? And they're like, oh yeah, that's like half of what we're doing.
Yep.
And then I said, someone should go alert the country to the fact that this is coming and that we need to evolve meaningfully. And I think someone should run for president on big ideas around universal basic income, human-centered economy, evolution of the 21st century in technology. So who here wants to do it? And then everyone was like, I would never do that. And so I said, look, guys, one of us has to do it. So if none of you are going to do it, I will do it. And then some of them said, oh, good, I'm glad you're going to do it. Like, I'm happy to help. And then others, found that a bridge too far. Happily, my wife was more supportive.
All right, let me back it up. You come back from Silicon Valley, you sit down with Evelyn after dinner, the kids are away from the table. You say, Evelyn, let me tell you about my trip. How does she take this?
So, and you can ask her, but I don't think she took it that seriously.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. She didn't think I was serious until I quit Venture for America. And then all of a sudden it was like, whoa, because the trip to Silicon Valley was in spring of 2017.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up leaving Venture for America that September.
Mm-hmm.
So there was like 5 months or so where she was like, okay, I'm very interested. She did agree with my concerns where when I spelled out for her, it's like, look, like AI is definitely coming. It's going to.
But there are also personal concerns. 2 young kids, you live in Manhattan. Anonymity is no longer something your family has. There's security issues. There's just the lack of time and attention to your family when you commit all into something like that. I'm sure you had to talk through those issues too.
Yeah. She did ask, are we going to lose our anonymity, our privacy? And I said, I'm sure we won't, because I said no one's going to know who my family is. Like if Amy O'Rourke, Beto's wife, walked in right now, like, would you know who she was? So I use examples like that, and she's like, oh, I guess not. And keep in mind, I had been traveling for Venture for America 3 or 4 days a week. Mm-hmm. And already, so for the family, it was a little bit like, instead of going to Michigan and Ohio, I'm going to go to Iowa and New Hampshire. So it's a little bit of a trade. But I will say that I don't think either of us fully understood what we were getting into. Uh-huh. One of the mistakes I've made several times is to imagine that the next thing I do will be like the last thing I did. Mm-hmm. And it's never been right. Yeah. I thought starting Venture for America would be like running a company, which it was not. And I kind of thought running for president would be like starting a company, which was also not quite right.
Yeah. Great experience for you, though. I just watched from afar. I was very proud to know you and so supportive of what you were trying to achieve. My guess was that you were realistic about your chances. And I thought you were terrific on your feet. And then I realized, well, wait a minute, this guy was a world-class debater. So he's done some training for this. He's prepared for it, although this is not like the debates you did in London when you represented the country in the World Championships. But still, it gave you good foundational footing to be able to be on your feet, comfortable, and to understand your subject matter, know what you want to say, know what you want to achieve if you have the opportunity. So all that was good preparation. But I suspected that at the end of the day, whoever won would have the good sense to invite you to join the cabinet, because I think you were the most qualified of anybody in his circle, other than maybe Blinken, who he had a long relationship with the state. But I thought you would have been a terrific cabinet secretary in a number of roles where you could have really made a difference.
Well, thanks for saying so, Jim. I was a little surprised I wasn't invited to join the administration in some capacity, honestly.
Yeah.
Now, anyone who's really part of that circle knows that it gets political very quick. Mm-hmm. And that I remember as soon as the election passed, I was told to have every insider I know badger and call the administration saying, hey, get Yang like a spot.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like that was something that I should have to do or that I wanted to do. Like I was like, look, I'm not going to call my rich friends and be like, hey, go bother everyone in the Biden circle, like, find Yang a spot. Instead, I went down to Georgia and started working on the Senate races because I thought that this administration was going to be paralyzed if they didn't have a Senate majority. But I was a little surprised, honestly.
Yeah. Well, you're very young. Are you just about to be 49?
Yeah, that's right. Jim, I think I'm like a lot of people who are listening to this where like, you want to do good, you want to have an impact, but it's not like I have some dream to live in DC or,
I wasn't talking about the living in DC part. I was talking about what you could do at commerce, what you could do at education, what you could do in so many roles. I mean, even in agriculture, whatever you're going to get into, you're going to learn. You're going to say, how do we think differently about this? How do we think about what's coming down the road in terms of technologies and science?
I would have loved commerce, honestly.
Yeah.
I think
But commerce is really a big raise money job, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it has that for sure. I'm supporting a presidential candidate right now named Dean Phillips, who's running against Joe Biden. And
by the way, everyone listening just went, who?
Yeah,
what?
I know. So check him out. He's the CEO of Talenti Gelato, which was sold to Unilever. So he's a builder and entrepreneur. He's a 3-term member of Congress in Minnesota. He's 25% in New Hampshire. And he's 54 years old, which I'm going to suggest might be kind of a win for
Isn't he too old?
for the country. No, but he asked me, it's like, hey, if we, I mean, Joe Biden said this to me half a dozen times, like, hey, if I'm in DC, I want you to come with me, which is one reason why I was frankly surprised that, I didn't get a call. But Dean and I had the same conversation where Dean's like, hey, if I win, like, we'd love to have you in DC. And so, there's going to be a time I think when there's a different type of leadership in Washington, and I imagine that I'd end up playing some kind of role.
There's one other stop I'd like to get back to, which is you decided to run for mayor of New York City. I thought that was a mistake for you because I thought your brand was so high, and I thought it's such a long shot because of demographics here in New York City. So that my personal opinion, I haven't told you that before, but it didn't work out. But you still are a fan of the structured voting.
I love ranked choice voting. I think it's one of the antidotes to what ails us. I want to get rid of the party primaries. But Jim, I think you'll appreciate this. Check it out. So I come off the trail and
your engine's still running.
Yeah, we were riding pretty high. And some people asked me to run for mayor of New York City. And at first I demurred. I said, I don't think that's the right role for me. But they kept coming.
But if you had won, you'd make a great mayor.
Well, thank you for saying so. But they kept coming back to me and be like, look, man, like, you could do a ton of good. And one of the things that hit me was you have a budget of, let's say, $100 billion a year. If you can improve the allocation of that by 5%, you do $5 billion worth of good a year for 4 years. $20 billion worth of good. I mean, like, if you walk away from that kind of opportunity, are you full of shit?
Yeah.
Really, like, that's the way I felt. It's like, and I was on TV every day. The rest of it, it's like, am I here to be on TV or am I here to try and improve people's lives? And so then it
begets the other.
So that it became like a character thing or like a substance thing for me. It's like, if I'm going to walk the walk, I should get myself in the ring.
Looking back now, how do you analyze that experience for you? Net positive?
My wife and I reflect on it and say that we think it was necessary.
Yeah.
Like, I needed to run for something where I was a top contender and learn. And it was not the right demographics, to your point. I think that at a different time, maybe, like, I would have won, but learned a ton. Looking at it still, I don't question my decision to run, even though there were people in my circle who, like you, advised me not to. Yeah. They said, look, you're Mr.
National.
Yeah, you're Mr. National Technology, AI, everything you said is going to come to pass. So like, you're just going to look better and better. Just like ride that stuff. And
I thought Brown would have come calling.
We joke sorry, Brown, but my wife and I joke that, like, look, I'm too young for retirement, kid. You know what I mean? No offense to anyone out there. It's great stuff. To your point, I was fired up. I said, like, let's do as much good. And I'm still deeply concerned about the direction things are going. Heck, I see what's going on with this administration in New York, and also, think like, wow, I would have done better. So, can't be too mad at the decision around.
What comes next after New York City is we decide that the political process that you've been part of, you've seen it from the outside, you've seen it from the inside, and you see really it's structured as we got chatted a few minutes earlier about my being president of Michael Porter fan club.
Yeah.
And you know the co-authors of Michael Porter's book all about the duopoly in politics. And that spurred you to think that maybe here's another place where you can make a difference.
All right. So here's one of the reasons I ran for mayor. Check it out. So 2020, I come off the trail. I still feel terrible about the direction of American politics. And I'm really hot. So, I get a book deal. And the world travel.
What was that book called?
It's called, you're right. While I'm zooming all day for, Joe Biden and Cash Leaf and a bunch of other things during 2020, not to, traumatize us all to get us back there. But I dig into why I feel like our problems aren't getting solved. And I realize that our political system is not designed to solve them, in large part because of what Michael Porter and Catherine Gale wrote in the politics industry.
You've gotten to know Catherine quite well, right?
Yeah. Catherine and I are now like comrades in arms. I guess then now I should talk a little bit about that thesis, which is the political parties are like businesses where they'll listen to incentives. Yeah. And unfortunately, their incentives are not to solve our problems and make our lives better. It's to win races, which means placating and pleasing the primary voters who tend to be the most extreme 10 or 11% of folks in districts, very ideological. So you have our legislators getting pulled to the sides, which is why most of us look up and be like, wait, what are you guys talking about? Like, it's not what I care about. And that's the way their bread is buttered. The numbers I use is, what's the approval rating for Congress right now?
23%.
Yeah, now it's even lower. It's like 15%. Wow. What's the re-election rate for incoming members?
95%.
94%, right? So if you're a business person, you think, wait a minute. Like,
this doesn't compute.
Yeah. And the numbers are so out of whack because 90% of the districts are drawn to be either blue or red, Democrat or Republican. Most of
It's not just Democrat or Republican, but extreme Republican or extreme Democrat.
Sure, because again, they're not listening to you. They're just listening to whoever's going to vote in the primary.
Because they're going to vote and whoever's going to write a check.
Well, whoever wins the nomination of that party in that district is going to win.
Yes.
In 90% of the districts. So then if you imagine their incentives, it's not to be reasonable. It's like, okay, I just got to get my party's nomination, and then everyone else doesn't matter. So Catherine Gale and Michael Porter laid this out in a book called The Politics Industry and said the only way to fix things is to fix the incentives. And the only way to fix the incentives is to get rid of the party primaries, make it so that all of us can vote for anyone, and use instant runoff or ranked choice voting to choose the winner so you can have more than two candidates and the winner has to get a majority. So I read their work in 2020 and was profoundly moved by it. I thought they're right.
Yeah.
Everything else we're doing is less high leverage than fixing our political system. And so I was trying to figure out what my next step was. And I realized that if I were to run for mayor of New York and win, then I was going to declare myself an independent after I took office the following year and said, hey guys, not only am I an independent, but I'm the charter member of a new political party, the Forward Party, that just wants to get stuff done and is not ideological and it isn't left or right. It's not left or right, it's forward.
Yeah.
So the master plan was become mayor in the biggest city in the country, inaugurate this new political party and try and lift us out of this mess by saying we're going to get rid of the primaries, which you can do here in New York. But Bloomberg came this close to doing it. Get rid of the primaries, making so anyone can vote for anyone, and then adopt a more rational form of government. Now, I didn't win that race, but the book was already written and done. And so at the end of 2021, I came out being like, hey guys, like, we need an independent political movement that's going to try and cure the duopoly.
With ranked voting here in New York, Mayor Adams won by a very slim.
So here's the big thing, Jim. ranked choice voting within a party primary, the way it was here in New York, is a slight improvement. The real improvement is if you let anyone vote, because so I'm running for mayor. Guy comes up to me on the street, says, "Hey, Yang, I'm for you, like excited to vote for you." And then I say, "Great, are you a registered Democrat?" And he said, "No, I'm not." And then I said, "Well, then you're not going to be able to vote for me unless you have a time machine and go back to February." And because they need you to register in February, vote in the primary, the summer, which, by the way, think about that for a second. That's how hard to do that. 900,000 people voted in the Democratic primary here in New York City. City of 9 million, so let's say it's 10% of the vote. So to your point, Jim, the winner, Eric Adams, might have gotten 250,000 votes, 300,000, but it might be like 3% of the population. Now, they use ranked choice voting within that primary, and that's better than not. But ideally, people who were not registered Democrats could have voted, and then you would have had independents, you would have had Republicans.
I see. And so ranked choice voting, you're saying not within the primary. It's an improvement, but not what you're looking for. You're looking for ranked choice voting open to everybody to vote, and everyone to vote.
Which is the case that Michael Porter and Catherine Gale make in their book. They say that the problem is that if you're outside of the dominant party in a community, your vote is meaningless. Mm-hmm. It's useless. Which, by the way, is totally true.
By the way,
no, and that's why here in New York, there were a lot of folks being like, "Oh shit, we should switch our registration to Democrat and vote in this primary because, after that, it's over."
Yeah.
And the same thing happens all around the country.
But we saw examples of Bloomberg running as Republican. Everyone wasn't Republican, but so that's an example of what can happen. It was a freak of circumstance there that he had the ability and the wherewithal to do that. He didn't have to worry about raising other money from the party machine. So you're saying, let's take that good example and make it more practical.
Yes. Bloomberg is something of the ultimate example of what we should be going for, in my opinion, where he just
agreement.
It's just just wanted to make stuff work better. But he's also an exception to many rules because of his resource level.
Yes.
And so that
his willingness to use it.
Yeah, I loved it.
For good, for politics, whatever.
Yeah.
I think I read that he donated, on average, each of the 12 years he was in office as mayor, over $300 million from his foundation every year.
Yeah, it would have made an enormous difference in the life of people here. If we can make it so that the system is more representative, then a lot of folks that you and I know, Jim, would be more likely to run for office, more Bloomberg types, because there are a lot of folks who are CEOs, founders, builders, who know they can do better, but they look at this political system and say, this system is not going to be nice to me. The system's going to shit me. Those of us who just want things to work better should look at it and say, our political system is the problem. And more folks are waking up to that. I mean, we might be in for a Biden-Trump rematch that 2/3 of Americans don't want. Combined age 159. I mean, the whole thing is nuts. Like, we all know hundreds of people that we would annoy. Our best and brightest right now are avoiding politics like the plague. Yeah. At best, maybe sliding a check across the table and saying, good luck with that. Yeah. We're going to spend $10 billion beating each other up in this next cycle. To what? What end? The question is, how much should we be investing in actually rationalizing the elections themselves and the way our system works, and the total amount getting invested in these reforms, like getting rid of the party primaries in Nevada, which is on the ballot in 2024, by the way. It's going to cost $20 million or so. The second time. So we had 153.47 in 22. And the winning advertisement, I think, should speak to people here. It was a military veteran looking at the camera saying, I went overseas to defend our country for years. I came back. I can't vote in our primaries. And I don't think that's right. And then said, vote yes on question 3 to let this guy vote. so 53% of Nevadans were like, yeah, sign me up. Now, to get those commercials on air and beat the drum costs $17 million. But if you get the message out, most people will agree. Now, we're going to have to run that again in Nevada in 2024.
Because Nevada says to change the law, you have to have it passed by 2 legislators.
Yes. So the Nevada state constitution says in order to change the way their elections work, you need it to pass twice mechanically. And this time, by the way, the Democrats and Republicans are like, oh my gosh, they could get rid of our primaries. That they came out against it last time. They didn't spend big against it. But there is a movement afoot that I am part of to get rid of the primaries and rationalize things so that that military veteran and Jim McCann and you, like, your voice matters as much as the clutch of insiders that right now control things, and they're fighting against it. But we have the people on our side. We have, frankly, like the mission of curing American politics is something that at this point 80% of us would sign up for.
Give me some examples. I heard you spoke at the Worth Technologies Impact Innovation Forum in Lake Nona, Orlando, back in November. And you had some great examples of how eliminating the primaries is beneficial for all of us.
Yes. So the biggest example in real life is that Alaska got rid of their primaries in 2020. Cost $6 million, very cheap state. And then in 2022, Sarah Palin loses to a state legislator named Mary Peltola in that congressional race. And under the normal structure, Sarah Palin wins because she wins the Republican primary, the Dem wins the Dem primary, and then it's a red-leaning state, so Sarah Palin wins. But you had all candidates in the same primary, and it was chosen via ranked choice voting. So Mary Peltola got enough second place votes because she's a very pleasant, reasonable person, so that she edges out Sarah Palin 52-48. And I'm going to suggest to most of us that's like a pretty great return. Even more important, Senator Lisa Murkowski, the only Republican senator who votes to impeach Donald Trump, who was up for re-election in 22.
What state?
In Alaska, same state.
Yeah.
So the same time Sarah Palin's losing because of getting rid of the primaries, Lisa Murkowski, her approval rating among Alaskan Republicans went down to 8% after she voted to impeach Trump. So they're like, we hate her now. But there's no Republican primary in Alaska, so she essentially goes right through to the general and manages to edge out the Trump-endorsed lunatic, honestly. 52-48 again, because you didn't have a primary. And imagine 6-8 U.S. senators who didn't have primaries. All of a sudden, they would be like, "Well, I guess I can do the right thing now, because I don't have to go to my base 6 years from now and to keep them off my back."
And you hear that constant threat, particularly from former President Trump, about he's going to primary you. Why is that such an effective bullet in this gun?
All right, there were 10 Republican House members who joined Lisa Murkowski in voting to impeach Donald Trump. 8 of them got wiped out in the primaries.
They got primaried.
They got primaried and they lost, or they saw the writing on the wall and said, I can't win enough. So of the 8 that got wiped out, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, Peter Meyer, Anthony Gonzalez, some of the more principled, straight up leaders in that party. Mm-hmm. Now, you're talking about a system where incumbents have a 94% reelect rate. And then they see 80% of their colleagues get wiped out. And the only 2 who made it back were in Washington State, where they have a funky top 2 primary system, and they didn't have to go through a normal Republican primary. Yeah. If you have to go through a Republican primary, you're out. That's why folks seem, and you've met them, in real life, they seem actually pretty reasonable. Then all of a sudden, you get them in the group, and it's like, oh, I can't go against the base, because by going against the base, I lose my job. Now, if you get rid of the primaries, then all of a sudden, their incentives improve dramatically. And half a dozen U.S. senators have gone up to Lisa Murkowski on the Senate floor and said, we envy you so much you don't have a primary, because now you can be reasonable.
Yes.
Now, the cost to turn off the primaries in 4 or 5 states, you're looking at a $20 million per state cost. Not all of them are going to work either, but if you were to spend $100 million, you could liberate 6 U.S. senators. And then our national politics would improve dramatically.
Just with 6 senators who aren't tied to the fringe of their parties.
Yeah, because if you look at the Senate right now, it's 50-50. You essentially have like this fulcrum in the middle. And that might even apply to the 10 to 12 members of Congress who would be liberating too, because they also don't have primaries, and they could look up and be like, oh, we now can do what 51% of our people want. Mm-hmm. And that $100 million right now, I will tell you all, is not being spent. The total amount getting spent in this movement right now is maybe $30 million.
Tell me about the party. What is the structure of this party?
So we are pragmatic, where we're a political party in Utah, South Carolina, Florida, like places where it's very easy to get ballot access. Uh-huh. And then other places where a group of Americans supporting good guys with a D, R, or I next to their name.
And you came together with a couple of organizations recently that have become part of the forward movement.
Yeah, so my co-chair is former New Jersey Governor Christy Todd Whitman, Lieutenant Governor Terry Healy, who is Mitt Romney's Lieutenant Governor in Massachusetts, just joined as the executive chair. So it's moderate Republicans, it's sane Democrats, it's independents, and we're trying to create this safe zone for folks to say, okay, I get it.
So what kind of resources do you need in your movement? So some places you'll be a party where that's easier to do and easier to get ballot access. What kind of resources do you need? Do you need lawyers who understand election law state by state? Do you need communications people? What do you have? What do you need?
Yeah. So what we have is we have hundreds of thousands of Americans around the country who volunteer, who will vote, who will like knock on doors, and then we're activating them around things like the ballot initiative in Nevada, saying, guys, we turn out the primaries in a swing state like that. That would be enormous. So let's go to Nevada and knock on some doors and tell people to vote yes on question 3, which is, by the way, what I'll be doing later this year.
Not voting, but knocking on doors.
Yeah, not voting. And then I'll be there. I'll donate. So the total amount of resources necessary for Nevada this year is probably around $20 or $25 million.
And where's the money coming from now?
So the money's coming from Catherine Murdoch, Mark Merrill, John and Laura Arnold, Kent Theory, Catherine Gale, who co-wrote this book with Michael Porter. There are a group of major donors who have realized that without structural reform, we're just going to keep on feeding each other up. Big donors to Forward include business leaders and tech guys, some friends of mine. So it's a really fun, refreshing movement.
As the world hears what you're doing and you started to get some traction, how can the average person who is interested, is turned off by the clamor of the dialogue right now, and geez, that makes sense. I'd like to help Andrew and what he's doing. How can they help?
Wow. So if you're a check writer, go to UnitedAmerica.org, which they're the ones who are funding these ballot initiatives. If you want to get involved with the political end, reach out to us. You can reach out to our COO, Matt, at forwardparty.com, or just go to forwardparty.com. And if you want to put an end to the nonsense and the craziness, really do check out Forward. It's a group of hyper-rational patriots who are trying to fix the real problems, which is the incentives that make even reasonable public servants look unreasonable and act unreasonably.
Yeah. So what happens this cycle? You active in how many states this cycle?
So folks hear Forward Party, they think, they're going to run a presidential candidate in 24, which we're not. Let's say I were to run for president in 24, I'd be more likely to help Trump win than anything else, so wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So what are we doing? We are enlisting and supporting 300 sane, moderate, local candidates in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, with the thought that if you have hundreds of good local candidates, then the people who come out to vote for them will also vote for the non-extreme candidate at the top.
Yeah.
This entire election is going to get decided by what?
5 states.
5 states. And out of all the money that's pouring in, it's going to get decided by probably tens of thousands of votes in those 5 states. The delta might be 200,000 voters spread out among those 5 states. So let's say we run these 300 local candidates and we increase the turnout for non-extremists by 30,000. If each of them gets like 100 of their sitting friends out to vote for them, 30,000 votes might be the difference between a terrible result and a good result.
Yeah.
So this is a very high leverage move. I hope people can sense that about me. It's like, I think in these terms, like we spend a few $1 million supporting these 300 local candidates in the swing states. Like the way we all vote, we all know it doesn't matter. It's we're in New York, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's only going to matter in those 5 states. So let's try and get good candidates out, which will mean that better people come out to vote. But I'm son of immigrants, I'm a parent. I just want things to work better for my kids, for your kids. And we all can sense that things are slipping away. And one of the things that drives me crazy, Jen, is I can't tell you how many conversations I've had where people are like, yeah, I don't like the way things are going, but what can I do? What are you going to do?
Yes.
You know, like,
And now you have an answer.
it's infuriating because these are like entrepreneurs and builders who would never accept that in other contexts.
Yes.
You know, like you ran into an obstacle in your business, you're like, oh, let's figure it out. Like on this one, it's like, oh, like politics can't.
It's unfavorable.
I mean, this is a solvable set of problems with, you know, a couple $100 million. And we've made massive strides with $6 million in Alaska, $17 million in Nevada, with getting good candidates out there. I mean, when people ask me about, am I optimistic about it, I am. But I got to say, it's a race because things are getting worse in real time. And so the question is, like, how much can we get done in this cycle or the next?
Well, I'm sure glad you're putting some of your energy at this. It's so important, and I think you're making a difference. And when I heard you down in Florida talking about the changes in Alaska and how it influenced the outcomes, I said, "Oh, there is a practical and real example, and not just a scary one we saw here in New York."
Yes. Get rid of primaries and let's try to improve from the Biden-Trump rematch. I mean, that's garbage. I mean, looking at it, we should not accept that as the rematch.
Thank you for checking in with us, Andrew, and bringing us up to speed on all the interesting things. You're a terrific guy. I'm so glad I got to sit next to you 5, 6 years ago now, and I had this guy tell me I'm running for president. I thought it was ballsy then, and I think it's terrific now.
Thanks, Jim. I mean, you're an awesome role model, builder, entrepreneur, mentor. Like I've been an admirer of yours for a long time, but also, most importantly, I'm a customer with the Financial Fire.
I love that. Thanks, Andrew.